Okay. So everyone, I appreciate you joining. We are going to move right ahead and people will come on as they are able to. And at any time, please pull up your chat window. Your controls are down here. You won't see them here on this particular, whoops, let's go back. But feel free to grab your chat window. Here's my controls. They may come up on the side or on the bottom for you. And then you can grab this chat window, which I have up right here. And at any time, ask us a question. And you can move your people around, your gallery around, however you want it. So this is how I'm going to organize it, like this. And feel free to ask us any questions as we go along. I really want to welcome everyone today. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for taking your time out on a Sunday, which I know is not always so easy. I'm very excited to have Susie with us. Susie Hollands is somebody that I know going back about 7 years or so. I rented an apartment from her, a long-term, well, not long-term, somewhere in between term, 3 months, when I was researching something for my site. And we've been friends ever since. We've had drinks, we've done a few projects together. And my goal really, because I have had two wonderful experiences buying in France, not only in Paris, but also down south. And I want to share that experience with you, really to dispel some of the myths, to make it easier for you to understand that it is possible. And I know Paris is obviously more expensive than most of the rest of the country, but it is still possible. It's still a great investment. And Susie's going to take us through all of that. And Susie, I want to introduce you. She is somebody, I think you started your business in 2003, about 15 years ago. Yes, and she saw a vacancy in the market for helping us expats to invest and to buy in Paris in particular. And now I know she's selling beyond Paris as well. But her specialty is definitely Paris. She lives there herself, obviously, and she knows all about the market. She's known for giving these amazing reports in terms of, the value proposition, costs versus, what's on the market in terms of availability. So anyway, she is our go-to pro today. I'm very happy that she's here with us, the Wall Street Journal, and all the New York Times. She's quoted all the time. So I'm very grateful to have her on board with our webinars and also our seminars. So we're actually doing 3 in-person events, which I'm going to show you and tell you about later. But you can come meet her in November in New York. And that's going to be a whole day seminar. So this is really just a teaser for those experience where you can really learn all that you need to know before taking the leap, and it's a leap you will never regret. Welcome to everybody who's just joining now, and feel free to ask us questions as we go along in the chat box. So and Susie's going to get into all the details, and please, I just want to say welcome, Susie, and say hello to all the folks we have online and the ones who are going to watch later.
Hi, yeah, glad to be here. Thank you so much, Donnie, for your lovely introduction, and I have great admiration for all you've done with your company and sharing, how to get the most out of France and Paris. Having done that yourself, you know that it really adds a new dimension to someone's life, especially if you're a Francophile and you finally get through you take the leap of faith and buy in Paris or somewhere in France, and it really is doable as long as you take the right steps and be very prepared. It's totally manageable process.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I just want to ask everybody to mute themselves, please. Please mute yourself, except for Susie and I. You're allowed to ask questions at any time in the chat window, but if you're not muted, we can hear you typing on your computer, and it won't be great for the recording. So if you don't mind muting yourself, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We will have a free wheeling question and answer later on where people can speak. So I think somebody still hasn't muted themselves. So don't type on your computer if you don't know how to mute. Just try and be quiet, or just find your controls, which are up here or down here. And you will see, here's the mute button. And I'm going to actually mute you, Barbara. So anybody else who hasn't muted themselves, please do so. I'm just going to go quickly. I have a few slides, and then I really want to hand it over to Susie. She's the expert. But it's important to note that the French mortgage rates are quite a bit lower than ours. You can get under 1%. Look at these figures. This is the current rate. It depends, of course, on, this is for expats though. So under 1% up to just under 3%. So it's an amazing situation. Obviously you have to qualify. Susie is available to help with all of that kind of stuff, introduce you. And she can introduce you to mortgage brokers, banks, etc. So you can pre-qualify, but most people put a minimum of 20% down. 25 is even better.
20% is the minimum that you can.
What's that?
20% is really the minimum that banks will accept.
Right.
So that's just a good baseline figure.
Exactly. So 20% is your minimum, and obviously more is better. And like I said, November 3rd, if you want to note that down, after this, I'm going to send you out the tape of this conversation, as well as some special deals if you want to go ahead and sign up for either New York, and New York is where Susie is definitely going to be, as well as some other realtors. And we're going to have on hand for this all-day seminar, we're going to have notaires, which are basically French lawyers, mortgage brokers, visa and healthcare specialists, to answer all those nuts and bolts questions. And then she and her fellow realtors are going to go in depth in terms of what's available, which is the fun part. And this is how the day is going to be laid out. We are going to have breakfast. We're going to do all the tough, less fun stuff in the beginning: visas, taxes, inheritance issues, etc. And then we're going to sit down for lunch with wine, because we got to get in the French mood. And then we're going to do breakout sessions with the realtors. And if you're hung up on visa issues and all that kind of stuff, you can also there will be people there as well during the breakout sessions to talk to you about those. But my idea is to have you go and connect with a realtor and connect with a region, because a lot of people, the hardest thing is to figure out where. But I know everybody today is focused on Paris, and so that is what we're going to talk about today. France, is it a safe investment? One of our other, actually pretty well-known realtor who works mainly outside of Paris, that's his quote. And it is, I've been there for the last 18 years, and prices, other than really just 2009 and 10, have been rising steadily the whole time. And they had a much better, quicker recovery and less of a drop than we did during the crisis, because of the French banks not being as crazy with their loans. And yes, Susie knows a lot more about that. And then in terms of, how safe is it? Actually, safety in terms of, crime. And that's something that, being in New York, I always know that almost everywhere else is safer than the United States, but not everybody knows that. Paris is along the lines of Kansas City, which is not where you think of as a, as a very dangerous place, or Phoenix. So it's by and large a very, very safe and beautiful, as we know, big city. Is it difficult for a foreigner to buy? No, there are some differences. There's French inheritance laws, which actually have changed now, so that they will allow you to honor your will in the US, which is new, but we can go more into that again at our all-day conference. Capital gains tax, this is the rate, 33% for non-Europeans, 34.5%. Correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, Susie, during this. And then we'll get into SCI. That's a real estate holding company. You might need to use that structure. It's a little more complex, and we'll go into that again on our all-day event. Paris used to be amazing place for rentals. Susie knows all about this, and we'll talk to you in more detail.
It still is an amazing place for rentals. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's what I want you to dispel that myth is that now, you know, you can't rent out your apartment. So I would love to just have you interrupt in this moment and to talk about that in terms of how the laws have changed and what it is and is not possible to do if you were to buy, let's say, a place like I have on the Îles Saint Louis. Can you rent it out and how often, etc.?
Do you want me to do that
Yes.
now or later?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the law didn't really change. There was always a restriction on renting seasonal rentals, 1 week stays. But with the explosion of investment in Paris, which was, you know, dates from about 15 years ago, so many people did this buy to let, purchased a property, and then there was, yeah, an explosion of short-term rental activity because also hotel rooms there weren't enough hotel rooms. As you know, it's not great value. You have a very small room, and people who want to experience the city wanted to have apartments so they could use the kitchen, go to markets, shop. So that really took off. And what happened is that our town hall decided that they needed to crack down on these people who were renting and, as they felt, taking homes away from Parisians. So they did, over the last 10 years, start to apply this rule which said that no rentals were allowed that were of this seasonal nature, a bit like cities like New York City. In any case, the furore kind of died down. People have got used to it. Now, the bottom line is don't buy a property and expect to be able to rent it on Airbnb for weekly stays because it's not allowed. You may be, you know, have a problem with neighbors. If you said to yourself, well, I'm going to do it anyway, it's just not a good idea. Obviously, if you're buying in a foreign land, you don't want to get on the wrong side of the
mayor's office.
Law, yeah, the mayor's office, and there are quite significant fines. But what you can do is you buy a property, and there's plenty of possibility to have personal usage time, and just rent it mid to long term. Where, you know, unless you want to just come every month and decide on a Thursday night that you're going to go for the weekend, it's pretty doable.
Yes.
You can rent it to someone for 3 months, 6 months, or a year. And obviously, when they move in, you know the date they will move out. You can then book your flights. And like many of us, we all plan ourselves travel 6 months to a year ahead of time. So it doesn't bother our customers. And probably about 75% of people who buy with me rent with VINGT Paris. We have a management and concierge service which is fully in-house, and that's a real added value for our buyers.
And that is, I want to say, that is not normal. That's an unusual thing, and that does make working with Susie a whole lot better. And I'm just going to go ahead and continue because I know we wanted to get through all this. So I just need to move my gallery screen. Whoops. Sorry about that, being pathetic. So I bought twice. I had to go through a lot of different realtors because there's no MLS system. And this is why I want to introduce you to people like Susie and the other folks I've got at the in-person seminars, because they can work with other agents. And so otherwise you've got to go to agent 1, 2, and 3, get to know them, get to explain what you want. And then, you know, if they don't have it listed, you got to go on to the next person. And that is really a headache, and it costs a lot of time and energy, and it's not fun. So that was my experience, and I don't want you to have to relive that. That's why I've handpicked these really extraordinary people to work with. And in Paris in particular. So just a note and why, if anybody asked you, and somebody did ask me this, which I thought was shocking, why are you buying a place in Paris? And I said, well, have you ever been there? You know, that's a silly question if you have, but if you don't know, France offers the best healthcare in the world. Year after year after year is rated #1 by the World Health Organization. It is much, 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 much more affordable than ours, even if you have to get complete insurance, which of course, once you're a citizen or been living there for 5 years, you can fit into their system. But anyway, when I'm there, I can pay $100 a month approximately and get full coverage as opposed to $1,000 here. These are the dates for the conferences. So I will send you more information about this and special pricing. But those are, so you can get to San Francisco, New York, if you want to meet Susie in the flesh, which I highly recommend. And we're also doing one in Paris, so you can look right afterwards. And this is, I'll leave you with, this is your life. It's happening now. So let's not put it off any longer. So I'm going to pull up Susie's now, just a moment, if you give me a moment, and I'm going to pull up her VINGT Paris, just a moment.
I'll probably just end up talking like
yes.
Go
ahead and start talking while I pull it up. Yes, go ahead and start.
I mean, I'm really happy to be here, and just how Donnie ended that introduction is exactly where we are. I think absolutely right that, you know, this is not a dress rehearsal. If you like Paris, if you keep going back every year, if you're just living for those trips and you really know the city, you know, why put it off? But if you seriously want to own an apartment in Paris, you do have to get your act together, and it's a big project. So the way that we tend to act is sort of like project managers for the whole process. It's not, we're not a real estate firm as you would know from the United States. For example, sometimes people call and they say, well, I want to go and see this property, or sometimes they say, I don't want to see properties, I need to discuss. And I say, well, that's how we work. You know, we first need to get to know our customers. We spend a lot of time at that part of the process, really discussing with people what is the end goal. So two major types of scenario. One would be that people are ready to use the property quite a lot themselves, maybe even full time, but more often it's a case of they're going to make 3 trips a year and stay for a few months at a time. Or the other type of customer we have, they say right now they're quite busy in their working lives and still have kids and things, but they want to invest in a property now. And as they start to slow down the working life, they'll spend more and more time in France, and they may even move permanently. So we work backwards from that goal, and then we'll do a full investigation of, you know, how do they want to finance, if help is needed in financing. We can suggest direct contact with some banks or a mortgage broker who will be able to maybe present a dossier to different types of banks if necessary. To be honest, for American citizens, there's not a lot of choice about whom you can borrow with, because there's only really a couple of banks who will work with American customers. Sorry to bear the bad news, but because the US requires a lot of detailed reporting on citizens' accounts outside of the United States, it's kind of a pain for the banks. So some banks don't want US customers.
Susie, I just want to interrupt you just for a second. We have your webinar, your keynote rather, up, and just let me know when you want to move forward. I've got your first page, and I can.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'll just sort of give you the basics, and then I'm going to slide 2. So Yeah, a little bit about what we do. I started VINGT Paris in 2003 when I moved to Paris. I moved because I was a big fan of France and French culture. I spoke French, and I decided to spend a bit of time living in the city. And I'd come from quite a fast-paced business environment, and I was going to take some time off. But what ended up happening is that I saw and heard from many people that was very, very difficult to get any service and help in moving to France, advice or help with purchase or rental. And that's where VINGT Paris came from. I started the company to assist people, and always had quite a few American clients. Now I think we probably have about 40% US, and then the rest of our customers are a mixture from all over the world. Could be South America, Australia, Britain, India, many customers from Asia and the Middle East, the Gulf countries. So, you know, Paris does attract everybody. It's just
Susie, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you guys all see the presentation? I know one person said they could not. I'm wondering if it's, do you see it, Susie?
Actually just see your desktop.
So I've done something wrong. So let me do it. I really want to, because she's done such a nice job with this. We got to have it.
If it's okay, but you know, I can keep just chatting.
Keep going. And meanwhile, I'm going to get this up here.
It looks nice, but basically, you know, oh, you're good. You're good.
Now you can see it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm sorry about that. And then while you're talking, and we did mention banks, and Canadians are they also have a hard time getting loans? And I mean, are they similar to Americans or?
It's a good question. I don't think it's quite as difficult for Canadians, but the banks sort of change which countries they lend to all the time. Probably about every 6 months, we get details from the banks saying now they'll lend to people from Singapore or whatever, New Zealand. And to be honest, it's a sort of moving target, but afterwards I can find that out for the person who was interested and get back to them tomorrow.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Mrs. Thatchick. So yeah, just to kind of summarize, so the whole reason that we, you know, and how we help people is to basically navigate the whole system and get the job done. I'm from Scotland, and we just kind of like to go from point A to B. In France, they tend to like to do a bit of a dance around, and you know, it's no secret that it's a complex country with, you know, just the French do business in a different way than we do in Anglo-Saxon countries, but it's also just administratively heavy. You really do need to have guidance through it to make sure that it's not a pain for you. You know, sure, you know, people can do this on their own, but they're going to probably overpay for the property. You know, they might get into some difficult situation if they try to renovate, and it's much better to work with in a really managed way. So that's what we try to do. We cover everything from the purchase itself, renovation support if needed. We've got access to 4 or 5 different firms with whom we work to suit different budgets and tastes. As I said, a lot of people want to rent the property just to bring in income and cover costs. Rental returns can be up to about 5%. So it is worthwhile looking at, and we offer that service in-house. So we find the tenants, we look after them, we check them out, we handle deposits, and we find the next tenant. So as I said, we're sort of a boutique-sized firm. So all of our properties that we manage for rental have been bought with us, and we have that strong relationship with the owners as well. So it's not like a huge machine. VINGT Paris is a family-run company. We're 20 people, and based in central Paris on the Rue Saint-Honoré. And in our team, everyone speaks English, but we're from all over the world. I think over 10 nationalities. So just to sort of move on, so why invest in Paris? Well, it's a really safe place to put money. You can see that every time there's economic upheavals in the world, we get an influx of people buying to just put money in Paris real estate. It's a sure bet. It's a very safe place to invest. A little bit like Manhattan to, you know, even if there have been some economic meltdowns, our market didn't, we never really had a down market here. There's not a lot of product, and it's really difficult to find the really good properties, and they go very fast, and they usually go at asking price. So that's another reason.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Susie. I just I've been kind of screwing up on your video here, but on your PowerPoint. But this is a really important screen, and I think people would love to hear a little bit about the increases here.
Yeah, I mean, we've had to be honest, the prices were going up before we had those elections last May. So there's the Macron effect, there's the coming Olympics, the business scene is, you know, much more solid. There's a huge amount of confidence in France, and that has impacted and pushed up prices. But I think, to be honest, more importantly is there's been a higher demand, but there's just a lack of product. It's a very small city. It's tightly bounded by that ring road that goes around it. So we're not building more properties. There's no off-plan new build properties. It's not like New York. We don't have, you know, new developments. And it's a one-of-a-kind place. So it's still the place to buy if you get to that lovely point where you say, I've got some money to spend and I'm going to, you know, finally get myself this city apartment. Let's look at Paris. So there's
I'm going to go ahead and should I move to the next one to talk about neighborhoods? I know that's everybody's most interesting topic. Where, if I love Paris, but where should I buy? And feel free to ask me questions, and I can try and answer here in the chat window while Susie's talking, and then we can bring them into discussion. I know I'm going to give you 15 minutes at the end. So Susie, just for a time count, we've got about 15 more minutes to present so that they can have plenty of time to ask questions.
Yeah, I'll go, I mean, I'll spend a bit of time on the neighborhoods. I think you're right, is very, very important. So, and then we'll get to the questions as soon as possible. I think that will be great.
Right.
So yeah, the company's called 20 Paris, and that's based on, people always ask me why, and I'm like, well, we have 20 arrondissements in Paris, 20 areas and districts. They're all unique. They're all great. There's not one that I don't like, I have to say. We work more in some areas than others because there's certain parts of town that people do, you know, want to buy in, but we're very much pioneers in terms of different neighborhoods that are opening up and changing as well, and particularly in the east and north of Paris. I actually live in the 11th, which is on the border of the Marais and the areas called Bastille. So I have a lot of friends and connections in the east of Paris, so we've always represented a lot of properties for sale in this part of town. So it would be, you know, still the 11th, 12th, 20th and 10th are really great neighborhoods to invest in that are feeling the effect of the Marais growing and pushing outside its boundaries. So the 3rd and the 4th arrondissement is the Marais. Full of boutiques, restaurants, and hip young people, French and foreigners. It appeals to everybody. And that's sort of busting out and starting to go into that green area, the 10th, 11th, and the 12th, where typically, you know, this is a more working class French neighborhoods, but They have amazing fresh markets, and around those markets have grown up in all of those areas some beautiful restaurant scenes. So a lot of young chefs went there because the rents were cheaper, and they're really lovely places to live, with also really good connections into the heart of the city and even the business district, which is in the west. So a lot of people want to live in that side of town. So that's basically the Marais and east of Paris. Then the classic neighborhoods that most people arrive in when they first visit Paris would be the left bank. So of course it's iconic, it's fantastic, you know, you absolutely dreamy. The left bank is where a lot of us, you know, dreamt of living or strolling or spending time when we, you know, before we spent time or lived in Paris. Unfortunately, it comes at a very high cost.
Yes, and that was the first place we bought. And let me tell you, it was gorgeous, but we did sell it and we made a lot of money on it, but it was expensive. But yeah.
Yeah, it's, to be really honest, it's not great value these days. Sorry to be controversial, but you know, the thing about Paris is it is small. And sometimes I say to people, they say, well, I want a 2-bedroom and I have 1.5 million and I want to be in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. I mean, it's just not going to happen unless they want to live on the 6th floor and, you know, 60 square meters. And that's probably not what they've got in mind. That would be about 600 square feet. So if they want to have a 2-bedroom apartment and they have that amount to spend, there's lots of other places that I'll recommend for them that will be lovely. And they can visit Saint-Germain-des-Prés. And they always say afterwards, you know, it's great, we sometimes go, but we love our neighborhood so much. I'm so glad we bought on, you know, in the 16th or the 11th, and they got more for their money, they got enough space. And those areas also are very good for rental. Whereas the 6th arrondissement, the Saint-Germain-des-Prés, and the 7th, Rue du Bac, it's really going to cost for something that's been renovated close to 20,000 euros a square meter. So, you know,
Can you translate that to square feet for those of us challenged in the meters?
100 square meters, 1,000 square feet, right?
Yes.
So 2 million, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be a 1-bedroom, 1.5 bath with the 2nd bedroom pretty small, and it's not going to be on the top floor, not going to have a balcony, you know that. So really for a great 2-bed, 2-bathroom in the 6th or 7th, you need close to 3 million. And that is crazy, I know, but that's what it costs. That's for what people have in mind, that's the budget. And sometimes people come and say, I've got 2.2, and you think that's a really great budget, but it's not enough to get a nice place in those areas now. So think hard about it. If you want the left bank, you're going to compromise on space or maybe an elevator, and people don't want to do that. So I think the customers that get the best deals are those who are open to areas, and they say, this is the kind of apartment and neighborhood I want, but I'm not absolutely fixed on where I need to be. As long as you recommend, Susie, that it's safe, that we can rent it, that it's going to be enjoyable, and I want a fresh market and good transport. There's so many other places to go.
And also, I think that so many of my clients, in terms of tours and so forth, we all fell in love with the 6th. The first, you know, that was the Americans in particular who fell in love with the 6th and the whole literary background, etc. But the 10th is so exciting. Like, you know, the Canal Saint-Martin is so artsy, and it's kind of like Greenwich Village in New York was the place in the 50s and 60s, but now it's Brooklyn. And, you know, so there is beautiful, artistic, very interesting, intriguing areas all over Paris. And it's really fun to get to know the other areas where you can really meet the Parisians instead of just tourists.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's much more out there. I'd also recommend, I mean, the other area that we're very active in would be West Paris. So the 8th the 17th, the 16th. The 16th has a bit of a bad rep. People will say it's boring, it's full of old people. But in fact, parts of it are very well connected, the northern 16th. And because it is slightly unfashionable, because people have sort of moved to the east of Paris towards the Marais and the areas we spoke about earlier, 10th, 11th, 12th, it's more of a family and you know, a family neighborhood and bigger apartments and things, but there are it is beautiful architecture,
Beautiful,
great shops and services. I mean, the residents of the 16th would stand for nothing less than the best possible croissants in their bakeries. So, you know, the quality of the services and restaurants and markets will blow your mind out there.
and the 17th has gotten really cool too. There's some really cool parts of the 17th, which I used to just completely abhor, and now it's like very cool, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'd say the 16th is best for rental. 17th is a bit far flung for people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard sell for us to convince someone to live in that area. So if somebody wanted to rent, and I'm hopefully adding value for the participants on this call, but I wouldn't pick the 17th, the 15th, or the 5th for rental, because they're a little far flung and they're not very coherent in terms of transport to get to where people work. So if you're hoping to buy and then rent to corporate customers, the type of people that rent with VINGT Paris, those are not the best ones to focus on.
Yes. Let me move forward because I know we're short on time here. You want to get into some specific places and some I see some gorgeousness here in the Marais.
Yeah, this I'll just talk about these different screens, but so these properties show you some of the things that people are on the lookout for in the Marais. You will find beams like in the second picture on the top right. That's because the properties were built 16th, 17th, 18th century. The beams are a classic feature. We're always looking for high ceilings because it just gives, the volumes just give you such a lovely sense of space. Not always easy to find, but those are hard to come by.
No, it's I'm just gonna.
Sorry, just please mute.
I missed the first half.
Excuse me.
No, it's not you. I missed the first half.
Hello. Somebody's not muted themselves.
Anyway.
Excuse me.
Doing?
Has not muted themselves, and I'm going to go ahead and mute all of you then.
Oh gosh, you must be exhausted.
Okay,
crazy weather.
1 second, guys.
Oh my god.
Please mute yourself.
Yes, I'm all right, thank you.
Okay, ma'am.
About Pete's brother, though.
I'm sorry, there's a lot of people on, so I've got to find this.
So awful.
Sorry, guys, this is a.
I'm sure.
Welcome interruption, and I'm going to just find a way to mute that person.
I know, because they were so close to him as well.
Okay, let's see here. I don't know. You guys, sorry, I'm just have to stop.
Keep talking. Yeah, I'll just keep
go ahead.
I
know.
These properties
had a good year, really.
Eiffel Tower
and an accident thing as well.
I'm sorry, you guys.
Oh my God.
All right, thank you. Somebody's helping me mute. I can't unmute everyone because I need to make.
Okay, I'll keep going. So these properties on this screen, the first one's in.
Okay, now, sorry.
Unmuted, I think. I'm unmuted, right?
Now, yeah, you're good.
The first picture here is a property in the 16th, and that one is gorgeous. We just sold it actually, but it's it has a lot of features that people want, you know, high ceiling, moldings on the ceiling, crown moldings, beautiful parquet wood floor, and the mantelpiece also at this property had a great floor plan and balconies, and it was sold for, it was about 2.7 million euros. It was a large 2-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom, great property. The other ones on this slide, yeah, they show, they're all in the 8th district, and yeah, there's different looks and feels, but generally, you know, if you want to buy a property that's move-in ready, you are going to pay a significant sort of uplift in the price per square meter. But when it comes down to it, we could help you assess, is that really worthwhile? But if you don't want to renovate, I used to say to people, oh, you know, get that property that needs renovation and, you know, we'll assist you with the renovation. But people are busy, and nowadays I just, when we have nice properties to sell that are already redone, it makes more sense to avoid the renovation and get the use out of them straight away. It really does, unless you're very hung up on doing an interior design project yourself and you want to come over to Paris and things. It's a lot of decision making. It does take time. Costs are fairly high in Paris for things like painting. You know, we have labor laws here that are make work expensive, work people expensive. So, I mean, we can help you run the numbers on all of that. And I have no problem with people wanting to buy unrenovated properties, but I'm more proactive now at helping people decide if it's really worthwhile, because buying move-in ready is actually, when you run the numbers, it works out the same cost and you get to use it straight away. So different types of property. Lots of people want the classic Haussmannian properties with the mantelpiece, wood floors and the crown mouldings, but there are other types of properties in Paris, like ex-industrial spaces with more of a sort of New York feel, with great light glass ceilings, and workspaces. Basically, there were little workshops and things. A lot of those type of properties are in the Bastille, some in the Marais. And then, I mean, I think we might be okay to sort of move on from that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Want to talk about this quickly, the basic sales procedure?
Yeah, how are we doing for time?
We don't have much time, so just quickly go through this, and we'll and then we'll get open. We want to open to your questions, guys. So go through this, Susie, and then we'll move on to questions.
Will do. Okay. Well, as I said at the beginning, first of all, before you get going on the project, it makes sense to find out how much you can borrow, unless you're buying cash, so that we can make a real investigation of what you want and then where you're going to be able to buy to get that 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom or studio, or, you know, amazing 100 square meter loft. So if you'd like to get financing, be prepared for a lot of paperwork is needed, but you only have to get that done once. The bank will not give you pre-approval. They will just give you a sort of, let's say, approval in principle. And the next step with them is come back when you found the property and you've signed the pre-sale. So don't expect to have a cast iron acceptance and offer before. That's not done in France. They commit themselves after you have committed yourself to the property that you're going to buy. The next step, you'll search for the property. If you work with us, we've got either property for sale that you can choose from, or quite a lot of people, because they won't be permanently in the city, nearly all of our customers can only make a short trip or maybe 2 trips to come and look at properties. We handle things from the perspective of a buyer's agent. So we basically take the whole project in hand. We source the property. If you want, we can source it through VINGT Paris portfolio and other agencies. So we basically search to order. Anyone who wants more information about that, obviously I'll be available by email, and we can even do another phone call to go through it all.
Yes, she's going to follow. She will. I will follow up with everyone, and she will. Susie will. So you'll have her direct contact information, phone number, everything, so you can follow up with her directly and buy your dream place. And I know that what is amazing is how much she can do for you from soup to nuts, and that's really what most of us need. We need help, just because it's a little scary if you haven't done it before. Here's some great stats. But I'm going to leave these up here, and then I don't think we have too many more slides now. I'll just leave that up, and let's open it to questions. I'm going to unmute anybody. Actually, if you just type in your Zoom chat if you want to ask a question, and I can unmute you, and I'm going to just let me know if you have a question, and I'm going to slowly unmute people, but if somebody's got something, go right ahead, and feel free to be specific about what you're looking for. You know, there's something that we can probably learn from all of you. Bob, yeah, go ahead. I see your, you might have a question, and I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead, Bob. Bob, can you hear me? Maybe I don't know if somebody else has a question. For some reason, I'm trying to unmute folks.
Yeah, most people are muted from what I can see, except Bob.
Unmute, unmute, unmute. Oh, here's some questions. So is the process or any of these recommendations different for someone who's looking to purchase property for full-time living? I think that's an excellent question, Sunita. So what do you have to say about that, Susie? Full-timers.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to put children in schools, that would be an important requirement people would have if they're going to move here full-time, and where you're going to be working. So that will determine areas. Other than that, one of the things that's quite nice is that becoming a principal resident means that you will have zero capital gains tax to pay when you resell the property. So that would be another thing that would be different. Other than that, you know, you can basically choose to live where you want to live. You don't need to buy based on what will be good for rental. So that's really the difference. I think that's it.
Yeah, yeah. So Kurt asked, what is the ideal size in square meters for the short-term to medium-term rentals? I think that's another excellent question. What most people look for?
Great question. I think you can get the best bang for your buck with a property of about 50 to 60 square meters in an up-and-coming part of town with good transport. So I'd say the 10th or the 11th is great value. Getting a small 2-bedroom, and if you can squeeze in 2-bathroom, amazing, because you can max out the amount you charge in rent for those, because they are quite rare. You know, if it's a great floor plan and you've got 2 bedrooms and it's 60, 65 square meters, you can get a really, really good rental return on that. So that's what you should look for. I love to get those ones for sale because I'm like, this is great. You know, I mean, you can find, we've got a property at the moment for sale. It's 770,000 in the 5th arrondissement, close to the river. And I can't remember the exact surface, but it's a 2-bed, 2-bathroom, and it will work so well for rental, and that's quite a good price for that.
That's a great price for 2 bedrooms, 770 by the river. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say that for myself, guys. Forget you guys. Another person asks, is there a penalty if a buyer cancels after the pre-contract phase? You ever had that happen?
If a buyer cancels,
So they've signed the pre-contract. They got cold feet or find something else they want. Did you have to put money down, and do you lose that like you might in the US?
Yeah, well, a couple of things worth mentioning that's quite nice for you guys to know, I think. To begin with, when you put an offer in for a property, there's no earnest money. You are not engaged to buy until you sign the promesse de vente, which is the pre-sale. Now, this is a bit unbelievable, but it can take up to 2 months for that to be put in place. So you have got so much time to do due diligence and get the cold feet done with. You've got masses of time. You will have your notaire, the lawyer, who will cover all the due diligence and will be totally at your disposal to answer questions. There's loads of time before you're engaged. At the point of the pre-sale, you put down 10%. If you change your mind, you have 10 days to just walk away, no questions asked. And then the other reason where you might be able to just call everything off is if you didn't get your loan from the bank. You are covered by a condition in the purchase document, the pre-sale, to say that you are out of jail free if that happens, if you do not get the loan.
Oh, that's great. So I've given you my 10%, but I have 10 days to walk away, no questions asked, get the money back, or if I don't get my loan. So that's pretty good safety clause.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much protection for the buyer in France because, you know, it's a country where they protect the consumer. Everything's in your interest. There's many checks and balances, and there's also all these kind of get out clauses as well. So
yeah, jail free, yeah.
It's a really good system.
My question for me, I'm always looking for a deal, and right now I'm just I don't own. I owned previously and I owned down in South, but what's the cheapest possible place that I could stand to live in that's not a studio? So because studio for me is just a little too cramped, but what's the cheapest place that I can get? What's the lowest price I can get to that's still, you know, a decent place that you would actually show me?
I think that you could probably find something, I mean, 10,000 euros a square meter is a little on the small. I think you probably have to go to about 11,000 a square meter. And then if you want bigger than a studio, you could have a small 1-bedroom, which is 30 square meters. So
what's that, 350,000?
Yeah, if you know, something where you could live comfortably.
So, and then like in the 20th, if I wanted to venture out to Ménilmontant, Belleville, which I think is a pretty up and coming, exciting area, I could probably get in for 350, right?
Definitely. And it's a great area with good links into the heart of Paris.
Yes.
Not all of that area, but that's where we come in. You know, we can very much guide you into, you know, where you do and do not want to be in that part of town. I mean, there's not many parts of Paris that are unsafe, but there are some where it'd be nicer than others, nearer to the market, better transport, nearer to the Butte-Chaumont Park, for instance.
I love that park. It's so beautiful. All right, we just have 5 minutes left. Everybody's unmuted, and you know, you have this woman here. Please ask her some questions. We've got some great questions already, but is anyone else? You can just go ahead and jump in because you're unmuted, unless you've muted yourself. Please feel free to ask any questions. If not, I'll keep talking. I think maybe we've answered all your questions and you're ready to buy.
And like I said, you know, absolutely delighted to help. If anyone, just shoot me an email. Like, you don't even need to write a big thing. Just say, you know, I was on the call, I had extra questions, or here's what I'm trying to do. Just shoot me a few lines if you don't have time, and I can either buzz you back or write back if it's easier just to have an email.
So we have your last page up here with all your follows, but I'm going to just type it in right here. Susie, what's your email? Remind me. Susie at VINGT Paris?
Yes, VINGTParis.com. Exactly.
Susie at VINGTParis.com, right?
That's right.
All right, so that's pretty easy.
And I think we got through everything that I wanted to say that we had planned for. So, as I said, you know, other questions, more than happy to just take care of them, however is most convenient.
Yes. People are thanking us, and I thank you guys for joining today. I'm happy. I like to end on time, but I'm going to send you a follow-up email. Because I'd love for you to come to these in-person events. It's really a great way to launch your looking process, is to find out all the nuts and bolts. We've just touched on them here today, and we're going to have 3 events coming up this fall and into the winter, and the last one being in Paris, where you can actually then continue looking and start looking and look with Susie in particular. That would be a lot of fun. She is a lot of fun, and she will take you out for drinks even if she doesn't drink. She has a lot of good cafes she knows.
Yeah.
And she's a lot of fun, very knowledgeable, and I do think connecting with your realtor is super important, so they understand your needs, your desires, and you know, being a true Scottish lass, she is I think everyone's cup of tea. Speaking of which, I'm going to Scotland at the end of the week for a wedding, so I'll be amongst your people.
Oh, do you want to? I'll send you all my best pick.
Please. Well, we're going to St. Andrews because my daughter's best friend is getting married to a lord, and she's going to become a lady. How about that? And my daughter's the maid of honor, so it's going to be quite an event. I'm very worried about my shoes and dress, but c'est la vie. And I'm going to move on and thank everyone so much again. And thanks to you, Susie, for giving us so much information today, being available for this. And I hope that everyone on the call and everybody who listens after, I apologize for a couple of little mix-ups. It's always a technological challenge with these things, but I love that they exist. I want to follow up. Please follow up with me. Ask me any questions. Follow up with me. And come to our events. It's going to be fun, and I wish you a great rest of Sunday or a wonderful Sunday evening. And thanks again, Susie. I will see you soon. I'll be in Paris on the 4th.
Bye, everybody. Thank
you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.